The Mitzvah of Milah that was actually originally in the Torah given to Avram Avinu. However, as the Rambam points out in Perush HaMishnayos and Chulin, and it's a general rule which he says by Milah as well as Gid HaNasha, but it applies to all mitzvahs. The reason why we're obligated in the Mitzvah of Milah has nothing to do with Avram Avinu. The reason why on the 8th day when a boy gets circumcised, we're not obligated because God gave the mitzvah to Avram. It was only because it was repeated later on Har Sinai. And all mitzvahs in general, all the mitzvahs mentioned in Bereshis or beforehand, we do learn different aspects and different halachas from it, but the reason why we're obligated is based on what was given on Matan Torah. So that's why, in fact, the mitzvah given to Avram Avinu was different than the mitzvah Milah given to Moshe. In fact, we do a different mitzvah than that was given to Moshe as well. As I'll explain, there are different parts to the Milah. There's the Milah, the cutting off of the Arla. Then there's the Priya, which is revealing of the thin membrane. And then there's a discussion. There is Mitzitza. Mitzitza is the sucking out the blood. So the Gemara only talks about Mitzitza for health purposes. So it's a discussion among the poskim whether Mitzitza is actually, besides how you do the Mitzitza, which is a separate dispute, but whether Mitzitza is part of the Mitzvah Milah or not is a discussion, because from the Pashtus HaGemara, the Gemara only talks about it as a health issue. They said someone who forgets to do the Mitzitza, they fire him. Like, why fire him? And if the molar messes up on some other part, you don't fire him? Because it's not an issue it's not an issue of the Milah, it's putting the child in sakana. So in fact, that led to a question not so modern. In the beginning of the 18th century, the Tiferes Yisrael, a German Rav, and he said that since Mitzitza really isn't part of the Mitzvah Milah, it's just a pragmatic way of keeping the child healthy. So he says, who needs the Mitzitza? There are other better, more modern ways, septics, antibiotics. Forget the Mitzitza and just go ahead and do the Milah and Priya, and do whatever the medical science says is the healthy way of fixing it. And however, many of the Hungarian Rabbanim did not go for this. In fact, that's why many Hasidic circles, they don't read the Tiferes Yisrael. This is from their point of view, one of the many controversial things that he might have said, and therefore, because he said no Mitzitza, they don't read Tiferes, they don't learn the Sefer anymore, the Tiferes Yisrael. So that was the whole discussion then, and it continued along. In fact, I heard from Rav Schechter that he said Rav Soloveitchik actually agreed with the Tiferes Yisrael. He thought that the Tiferes Yisrael was right. That really, if you look at the Din HaGemara, you don't really need you don't need Mitzitza per se. You have to make sure the child's healthy. However, that's not the minhag. Obviously, the minhag today is we go with the opinion that we Mitzitza, whether it's part of the Milah or not. We do the Mitzitza, and there's a further dispute later on whether Mitzitza b'peh, you have to do it through the original way with the mouth, or you could do it b'kli. So many poskim say today's, in fact, some might say it's usher to do it b'peh. Many poskim say it's b'kli, but again, among the Hungarian and other Hasidic Rabbanim, they say davka has to be Mitzitza b'peh. That was the way it was originally done. So whether Mitzitza is a whole discussion, whether it's actually part of the Mitzvah Milah, it definitely is a pragmatic part, but whether it's considered part of the Mitzvah Milah, that's a discussion. In fact, there's another part that may or may not be part of the Milah. It's what the Zohar calls itufei dam. There's some blood has to come out. It might come out anyway, but let's say you do a Milah and Priya, you don't have blood. You dafka need blood to come out in order as part of the Mitzvah Milah. Because the Gemara talks about the concept of hatafis dam bris only in a case where, let's say, someone's nolad moho, someone's born circumcised, or perhaps the gersh and the skayer, different opinions in the Gemara. Someone who converted already had a meal, what has to be done, but never talks about it in the sense that you have to actually have dam is part of the Milah. So that's based on the Zohar, the Mishkan Jacob, other poskim, some add that maybe there has to be some type of dam coming out as well, but that itself is also a question. But what's clear is you need the Milah and the Priya. In order to be part of them, fulfill your mitzvah of Milah, you have to do the Milah and Priya. And in fact, that's a discussion in fact, in the Gemara, because the Gemara in Shabbos, where it's actually 24 prakim in Shabbos, and that's how Rabbi set up the 24 prakim, and it's based as a pasuk in Yechezkel about because Shabbos is the Kala, and I guess there was an old practice, I'm not sure how they fit 24, maybe the woman could help us, but how they were able to find 24 places for the jewelry, and that was the minhag. When they got married, they used to have 24 pieces of jewelry, and therefore that's why Shabbos, so that's why 24 prakim. But either way, so he points out, that's where the whole discussion of Milah is in the 19th parak. They have a discussion about sitzin hama'akvin, the certain parts of the Milah. So when you're cutting the skin, there's certain parts of the skin that have to be cut, and if you don't cut them, you haven't done the mitzvah of Milah. And there are other parts, sitzin she'ena ma'akvin, where you still fulfilled your mitzvah of Milah. However, you're lacking in the zek keli manvil, you're lacking in the hiddur mitzvah. So the Gemara over there in Shabbos has a discussion. What do you do when a mohel is in the middle? If he's in the middle of the Milah, so the Gemara says if he's in the middle of the Milah, and if he forgot the sitzin she'ena ma'akvin, even if you're not in the middle, you have to go back and do it because you haven't done anything. However, if you're in the middle of the Milah and you forgot and you haven't done the sitzin she'ena ma'akvin yet, the Gemara says, the Brisa says you go back. However, if you already finished the Milah, so then you don't go back. So there's a whole discussion, what is the Gemara talking about? Why in the world would I not go back? Of course, it's obvious why I go back if I haven't done the mitzvah of Milah yet. But what's the harm of going back and finishing doing the hiddur mitzvah, the keli vadveo? That's the machlokas in the Rishonim, what exactly the Gemara is talking about. So Rashi learns the pshuta, we're not talking about Masechah Shabbos. He's talking about it's on Shabbos. So really, you need a whole hectare. If not for the Torah telling me I do Milah on Shabbos, it would be usur, because I'm causing a chabura. I'm causing blood to come out a wound. So I'm pointing out, it's only talking about on Shabbos if this is happening. You can't go back. For hiddur mitzvah, you can't go back and be machal Shabbos. And so then that would make sense. However, others learned the Gemara that it's not talking about on Shabbos, it's talking about during the week. And that seems to be the opinion of the Rambam. That even during the week, you would not go back for sitzin she'ena ma'akvin. So the question is why not? I understand on Shabbos not to go back. You have an issue of desecrating the Shabbos. But why in the world wouldn't I go back if it's on Tuesday? So that's the whole actually famous Bris Milah, Beis Halevi, which a lot of Hanukkah Torah, so I left that off because I knew I'd be discussing Milah the week after Hanukkah. But that's the whole issue in terms of how do you view hiddur mitzvah in general. Does hiddur mitzvah only make sense in the context of the mitzvah itself? When you're doing a ma'isa mitzvah, you're doing the act of the mitzvah, so then there's what to talk about, there's a hiddur mitzvah. What do I say? No. Hiddur mitzvah makes sense even in a vacuum. I already did the mitzvah, and now, totally in a separate scenario, I want to go ahead and do the hiddur mitzvah. So can you do that? That's the way the Bris Milah seems to learn the dispute here. So according to Rashi, we don't have to discuss it. It's talking about Shabbos, and that's why. But according to the Rambam clearly holds that hiddur mitzvah only makes sense in the context of the ma'isa mitzvah. Since I already did the Milah on Tuesday, so therefore come Tuesday later, we'll see what it means to finish the Milah in a second, but after I'm no longer considered involved in the Milah, so therefore I can't go back. And others say no, hiddur mitzvah does make sense in the context of the ma'isa mitzvah. And this what the issue was by Hanukkah. I'm not going to go and spend a lot of time on Hanukkah, but there's the minhag Ashkenaz is different. We follow the Rambam, kind of. Everyone lights their own candles, or you go by the members of the minhag Ashkenaz. If you have 10 members in the family, and the 8th night of Hanukkah, there are 80 candles at the end. The Sfardim go with Tosfos, that there's one menorah in the whole house. That's the Mahadrim and Mahadrim. But there's one difference. The Rambam writes the Baal HaBas lights all 80 candles. Our minhag is that every person lights their own menorah. So the Bris Milah asks, what's bothering the Rambam that the Baal HaBas has to light all 80 candles? What's that all about? So he says it's the same issue. That everyone agrees, as the Gemara says, by Ner Chanukah, the basic mitzvah is 1 candle per household. If you lit 1 candle any night of Chanukah, you have fulfilled your mitzvah of Ner Chanukah. You haven't fulfilled Hiddur mitzvah, Mahajim and Ahajim, but Ner Chanukah you fulfilled. So once you lit the first candle, that's the mitzvah. The next 79 are Hiddur mitzvah. So the Rambam L'Shitason, consistent with his view, that you can't separate the Hiddur from the act. So the one who's doing the first candle has to do all 80. And others, and our minhag, there are other ways of learning it, but the way according to the Bris Milah learns that our minhag is that we say Hiddur mitzvah can act independently, and therefore every person lights their own. You could say that you don't have a mind to be yotze with his and you're not doing Hiddur mitzvah, but that's the pshat over here. Getting back to Milah, that's how the Bris Milah says the pshat and the Rambam. Even during the week, once you stop being involved in the Milah, you cannot go back even on the Tzitzin, even on the Tuesday or Wednesday. So the question is, what does that mean that you no longer are involved in the Milah? Does it mean the Milah, the Priya, the Mitzitza, the Bagels and Lox? What's considered finishing the Milah? So that's what the poskim discuss. So clearly, if you haven't done the Priya yet, then it's definitely involved in the mitzvah, because the Gemara tells us in Shabbos, the Mishnah says, Mal v'lo para ki v'lo mal. One who does the Milah without the Priya, it's like he hasn't done the circumcision. And what that means is a further machlokas in the Achronim, whether that means it's nothing, you haven't done at all the mitzvah Milah, or no, there's a no debuta right. It's not that you haven't done the mitzvah Milah at all, but you haven't fulfilled the mitzvah Milah properly, and you still have to go and continue. So clearly, if you're involved in the Milah, if you haven't done the Priya yet, so that's considered being involved in the Milah. Once you finish the Milah, so then that gets into the discussion we had, whether you consider Mitzitza as part of the process or not. That would be the nafkamina according to the Rambam Shita. If the Mitzitza is not considered part of the Milah, and you already did the Priya, so then according to the Rambam, you wouldn't go back on the Tzitzin Shein or Ma'akvin. So that's the discussion. There's Milah, there's Priya. Some say you need, based on the Zohar, you need dam coming out, you need blood coming out. And then there's the Mitzitza, whether that's actually just a health issue or part of the Mitzvah Milah. That's a discussion in the Achronim. So we know the Torah tells us to do the Milah on the 8th day. And therefore, we know there's a concept that Ubiyom Afilu B'Shabbos. The Milah is one of the exceptions to the rule that we do a Milah even on Shabbos. What I mean exception to the rule is we know we have other mitzvahs. That when we have Rosh Hashanah falling out on Shabbos and Sukkot, and when the one falls out, the other one does as well. So we know that when Rosh Hashanah falls out on Shabbos, even though there's a mitzvah of shofar, we don't blow the shofar, or we don't shake lulav the first day, because the Gemara tells us in many places the concept of Gzeira de Rabba. Rabbi made a rabbinic decree in a concern that it shouldn't lead to desecration of the Shabbos, still a Shabbos. So therefore we're afraid people are going to carry, and therefore they said no shofar today, no lulav today, and no Megillah today. So the question is, so why not, so that's the Rishonim asked, so why not by Milah as well? Why does Milah, why don't we apply Gzeira de Rabba? Why didn't the Rabbi say no Milah on Shabbos, have the Milah on Sunday? So the different answers given. Milah is a Aseh Sheyesh Bo Kares. Milah isn't just like a regular positive mitzvah, but it's one of two positive mitzvahs that failure to perform has a serious penalty. Whatever kares means, we'll leave that for another shiur. But if you don't bring the Karban Pesach, or you don't do the Bris Milah, since Milah involves kares, we're not going to wait till Sunday, we don't want to push it off. Or as the Taz writes, that they point out that since the different limit to the power of the Chachamim. So we know the Gemara, the Torah tells us in Shoftim, Gosasim and Adavar Asher Yagiducha Yaminu Smo. From there the Gemara learns out that the mitzvah of listening to the Chachamim, even if they tell you right is left and left is right, which Rav Chanan Wasserman interprets that when Rosh Hashanah falls out on Shabbos, the Torah says to blow shofar, but the Chachamim says not to, and it's the case where you listen to the Chachamim. So what's the rule of thumb? So the Taz points out, if the Torah has something mafurish b'kra, if it's actually written explicitly in the Chumash that it has to be done, the rabbis can't tell you not to do it. In other words, if it would say in the Chumash, when Rosh Hashanah falls out on Shabbos, we are going to blow the shofar, so then we would be blowing the shofar. But all it says is on Rosh Hashanah is the mitzvah of shofar. It doesn't say on Rosh Hashanah which falls on Shabbos, so hence the Chacham have the ability to go ahead and say no shofar this year. However, when it comes to Milah, even though it really isn't a first Bikra, but based on the Yud Gimel Midas, we consider it the poskim, because it says Uvayom Hashmini, and we have a drush Uvayom Afil B'Shab. It doesn't actually say it, but the poskim consider it Mefurish Bikra. That's what the Taz writes. Since it's a Mefurish pasuk that says that you have to do the Milah on Shabbos, therefore, the rabbis don't have the power to tell you no shofar. So, because of the Indian of Kares, and because it's Mefurish Bikra, Milah is done on Shabbos. So if the 8th day falls out on Shabbos, we do the Milah. However, a Milah Shelo Bizmana, but a Milah which isn't on the 8th day, is not Docha Shabbos. Why wouldn't you have a Milah on the 8th day? So, either the baby is not strong enough, the baby is sick, so you wouldn't have the bris on the 8th day. So let's say the baby gets better on day 10, and day 10 turns out to be Shabbos. So the luck is you can't do the bris on day 10, which is Shabbos. You have to wait to a Sunday. So that's the halacha. Milah bizmana is docha Shabbos. A milah shelo bizmana is not.
Going back to the chorus though, would you be over on chorus the day after? Like, you're not going to be over chorus until after the entire lifetime.
Right, that's a machlokes, the Rambam and the Rabbi, exactly when does the chiyuv chorus you have until your whole life. If you don't do it, then, or some say it's there right away, but then once you do the milah, it takes it away. But either way you're learning it. But I think they're saying even more than that, because it's something which involves chorus. Whichever way you want to learn, like the Rambam or Ravid, it shows it's a more serious type mitzvah, as we'll get to. That's in fact, if we get to the topic tonight, but that's what Tosfos has a discussion about why you need a pasuk to exempt women from their obligation of, if the pasuk says only a father is obligated to make sure the son gets the milah, not the mother. So if we have time, maybe we'll go into the whole topic on that. But Tosfos in Megillah writes, why do I need a pasuk? It's a mitzvah saseh shazman grama. It's a time-oriented mitzvah. Why do I need a pasuk? So Tosfos in Megillah, there are 5 answers in the Rishonim, but Tosfos in Megillah says, because since the milah is an aseh sheyesh bo kares, so it has a different status. It's almost like a law, but then I might think that since it involves kares, maybe even though it's a zman grama, but a woman would never be chayev. Therefore I need a special pasuk, oso, by Avram, Kasher Tiva Oso, that Avram was commanded Oso v'lo Osa to him, and so we find in other places that Aseh Sheyesh Bakaris has a different status than a regular mitzvah Aseh. So it doesn't, whichever way you learn the Rambam and Ravid, one way is obviously if you're going to say the Tzchi of Kares right away, then definitely, but even if it's not the end of your life, but the mitzvah itself has a different quality to it because it's an Aseh Sheyesh Bakaris, even though you have, who knows, the person could die tomorrow, but assuming you have a whole life, it's still, because it's the nature of the mitzvah is qualitatively different. The question? Someone? No, okay. So therefore, that's why, so a milah bizman is docha Shabbos, a milah shelo bizman is not. So the question is, so there's an interesting discussion in the poskim, what about a C-section baby? What about it, which isn't so uncommon today? A C-section baby, so could you do, if the day 8 falls out on Shabbos, could you do the milah? So for first, it's like, why not? Why would we discriminate against a C-section baby? So that's a whole discussion in the Gemara in Shabbos, exactly what is one obligated, in other words, why do we wait to day 8 in the first place? So, some say the Rambam writes in or Nevuchim, maybe health reasons, but many assume that the baby, even at day 1 in theory, could have the Bris Milah. So why is it day 8? So some say you want to have a Shabbos to go through, some say physically, but the Gemara says you learn it out from a juxtaposition. As I pointed out, we learn out Milah not from Avram, but it's learned out from later on in Parashas Tazria. It says, Isha ki Tazria v'yolda zacha. Talk about a childbirth. The woman has a baby boy. V'tama shiva yamim. And then biblically speaking, she becomes tamei for 7 days. So today it's not really lamais anymore, but based on the laws of the Torah. So therefore, that the Gemara says in Nida, that you want at a circumcision, at a bris, the husband and wife could be together, and therefore they waited till after the Nida, the 7 days are over, and they had the mitzvah on day 8. So the pasuk says, Isha ki Tazria v'yolda zacha. The Tama, so it connects Tumas Leda to day 8, because the mother is Tami for 7 days, so we have the bris on day 8. So the Gemara over there raises the issue, what about a case where you can have a birth without the mother becoming Tami? So that's a discussion in the Gemara, whether you'd still say day 8. Some say, well, Avram Avinu, there was no halacha of Tuma V'Tara, and he circumcised Yitzchak on day 8, so it doesn't make a difference. And the other opinion says no. That was the Torah was given, and therefore now it's connected to the tumas leda. So therefore, so how do we paskin a C-section? So machlokas in the Gemara, whether a C-section baby should be day 1 or day 8. So we don't have any conclusive answer. So it's what they call a sveika dedina. It's a doubt how we paskin. And therefore, we wait to day 8. Why is that l'chomer? Because if it's day 8 and you do it day 1, then you have a problem. Milah before day 8 isn't good. You have to do another hatafas down bris. So you wouldn't be yotzei. So therefore, we cover ourselves. So we wait to day 8. So even if it's day 1, so you're still doing the milah on day 8. So to sveika the dina, we always go day 8. But if day 8 falls out on Shabbos, so it comes out. Not only it's a suffix milah b'zmana. So avada milah shelo b'zmana, we just said you can't do on Shabbos. But what we're saying here, according to the poskim, even a suffix milah shelo b'zmana. As we see a ben hashmashas baby, a baby born during, let's say, Friday, right in between sunset and nightfall. So again, so day 8 would be on Shabbos. It's a question which one's day 8. You have to wait until Sunday, because even a suffix milah b'zmana you cannot do on Shabbos. In fact, interesting, the post can talk about this isn't so popular, but this isn't so common to happen. But the Gemara in Chagiga talks about, I guess, a miraculous occurrence. I guess it's fitting to talk about it tonight. That the Gemara talks about someone who's inseminated in a bathhouse, a miraculous conception. So Rabbi Hananel has a discussion. So in terms of whether it's a boy, so the question is whether you have a meal on the 8th day or not. In other words, so Rabbi Hananel gives two opinions in terms of what's different about this type of child. Is it that it was a miraculous occurrence, but the length is the same, or the fact it's not considered a normal type birth? So Rav Shlomo Zalman goes with the latter, and he says it's anything that's not called a natural birth doesn't have the din of like we just said. It's like a C-section. The mother would not become tamei, and therefore it's a suffix whether you could do. It's a suffix whether it's day 1 or day 8. So he says that's why someone who is artificially inseminated or a black rice in vitro, all the different modern technology, you should not do a milah on day 8. So again, it's not common for, it's not usually a question that Mullah usually asks the person, but and a black rice, you don't have to tell the people. If people ask why isn't it on day 8, you could say the baby's a little sick, it's not healthy. But the Rav Shlomo Zalman and Rav Shechter, they all agree that artificial inseminated child or any of the type of the new modern technology, it's a suffix milah b'zmana, because maybe it's like a C-section, maybe it should be day 1. So therefore you would not do a milah on a healthy baby, you wouldn't. So we know we have so an unhealthy baby, so obviously that's usually the case we don't do. But so we have a case, C-section, artificial insemination, with all these modern cases, even though it's 100% healthy, but it's a suffix milah b'zmana, and you wouldn't do it on Shabbos.
Yeah, what is the rationale? So I don't understand what the rationale for. Is it because any kind of conception that is unnatural? Is there any kind of childbirth that's unnatural?
No, that's his discussion. So Rabbi Shlomo Zalman's writing the definition of Leda for these purposes for Tumas Nida and after the birth to be considered a Leda, it has to be natural. So he's saying so obviously the birth is the same way, but he's saying anything that's not done through the normal, if the conception wasn't done through the normal means, so therefore it's a suffix whether you chayav a meal on day 1 or day 8, and therefore if any of these cases happen on Shabbos, that's all the posts can bring down that you shouldn't have a meal on Shabbos.
What would be the rationale for the conception one? Because
the question is
7 days issue.
No, because the Gemara over there by the case of the bathhouse considers it not a Leda. It's not considered a normal birth if you get pregnant in a bathhouse. So it's 2 days of Rosh Hashanah. What does that mean? So that's a discussion, but the poskim machmer, it could be, if it's a miraculous occurrence and the lady is the same, you would be chayiv. So it's a suffix, which way? It's 2 opinions in Rabbi Chanana. Why is that case different? Mm-hmm. So machmer, because you could wait to day 9 and you just do it the next day. But if you took the first reason, then all those cases you could do on Shabbos. But halach l'maisa, all the Shlomo Zalman, Rav Schechter, Rav Black, they all say to be, but there's no reason not to be. Just wait to the next day. And therefore, it might not be considered late in terms of being tummy for 7 days, and therefore they say you shouldn't do it on Shabbos. So Milah.
They would ask the mother.
Yeah. Right. So that's another question you could add to the list if you're doing a Milah on Shabbos. But you should add. It's not a common question people ask, but it's a question you should ask if it's going to be a Shabbos bris.
Can't be.
Is that the actual practice anywhere that with a cesarean birth, the Milah would not be Dorch of Shabbos on the 8th day?
I mean, I was the Shulchan Aruch brings it down, and I haven't.
But is it actually implemented?
You mean? I assume. Have you ever done?
Halach l'maisa, that's an absolute no-brainer. If it's ben hashmashus or it's a cesarean section, it's doichen. If you're in the middle of a 3-day yontif, you could go from a Friday night ben hashmashus or a cesarean section, you could end up doing the bris on Tuesday, if you end up whatever it is. But the other thing they were talking about is a huge finish. That if it's an artificial insemination, it's not rare. In vitro,
I know
it's not rare. It's tons.
I know it's
in vitro, whatever the technology is, that risk you shouldn't not do it.
Exactly.
Even though the Leda took place in a normal vaginal delivery.
It was very surprising to me also when I first saw them bring that, but then a lot of posts can bring it down. So again, now you could check what the minig is, but in terms of, Rosh Shlomo Zalman says it. I spoke to Rav Schechter, agree with it, and I saw Rabbi Black bring it down. I haven't seen anyone else even raise the question.
But the man would know what the minig is.
Well, I'm sure I've done those bris on Shabbos. But
never asked.
Right, but it's still a good Milah. Milah done on Shabbos is still considered. You don't have to redo the Milah.
Of course not, because I'm Chal Shabbos.
Right. At the time, because you thought you were doing the.
No, well, I would think that would be a separate question. Now, do you have to ask? Right, you can be somewhat on Chazar.
Right, I would say is obviously if you definitely should ask before everything's set up and all that. I mean, if you could still change it, you should definitely ask. The question is if it's going to happen anyway, then you might better off not knowing. I'm saying if it's a scenario where you find out, so then if there are other poskim to rely on. I'm saying, but certainly, of course, with Chatchila. But I'm saying I didn't see any. I never saw a post. I never thought it was a shaila. And the only post I see discussing is saying is you can't do it. So it's hard to know if that's. I haven't seen anyone write that you can do it, but the fact they haven't discussed it. So I only saw the 3 people I saw discussing it all said you can't, which was when I first read about it, that was a big kiddush because you would think that's the norm. But the issue is what's the definition of Leda based on the Gemara and Chagiga. And I guess it's not it's not a big deal to wait until Sunday, for the next. Those are cases where you have the normal case of Milah Shalom Bizmani you wait, but a suffix Milah Shalom Ben Hashmashos and now. So what about? So you mentioned that's the case of sometimes
so nobody says that that was a miraculous conception.
No, right? No, the case of the bath that was
but a mechanical conception, what you want to call it?
Yeah, so I'm just saying that
they're a separate deal.
That that's what the bring based on the 2 days of Rabbeinu Hanana. How you learn that Gemara? Is it the conception was miraculous? The fact that it wasn't a normal Eidah. So the poskim, all three go l'chumra. They take, whether they're doing out suffix. I'm not saying it's definitely not. So to a C-section, it's a sveik at the dina. So there's a further suffix whether you apply this to a C-section or not. The C-section is a given. The Gemara already talks about it. So the question is, do you extend? Do you say today maybe that's a normal Eidah today, artificial insemination or a bit, that gets. So I'm just saying if you argue it's normal, so then it'd be okay to do it on Shabbos. But the poskim I just saw, it's a chiddush to me anyway. They said not to do it on Shabbos. But as he pointed out, that the latest you can wait is like to Yud Day Yud Beis, when you have a Friday night Ben Shmash's baby, and then you have 2 days Yantif, which leads to an interesting question. So we say Milah Bizmana is Docha Shabbos, and it's certainly Docha Yantif. A Milah Shalom Bizmana is not Docha Shabbos. What about Yantif? So Yantif Rishon, definitely not. You cannot do a Milah on Yantif Rishon. What about Yantif Sheni? We'll get to what the minhag is in a minute, but what's the halacha by Yantif Sheni? So actually, that's a machlokas among the Rishonim, whether you could do a Milah Shalom Bizmana on Yantif Sheni. Seems to be a machlokas, the Rambam and the Rush. The Rambam seems to say you can, and other Rishonim say you can. What's the machlokas? What's the issue on whether you could do? Again, a Vadai Milah Shalom it's definitely not the time it's not, and you're waiting, could you do it on Yantiv Sheni? The Rambam says yes, the other Rishonim say no. What's the issue? So Pashas, the issue is that we know the Gemara tells us what is the nature of Yantiv Sheni. Why do we observe Yantiv Sheni? Where did it come from? So that's two opinions in the Gemara, whether it's mitam minhag, is this minhag avosayim, that's the minhag of our forefathers and we're just keeping the minhagim, or no, it was more than that, it's a real takana d'Rabbanan. The Chachamim said you have to keep 2 days. So the Rambam seems to go with the minhag. If it's only a minhag, so a milah shalom bismana is still a big mitzvah, even shalom bismana. So the mitzvah milah shalom bismana, because you want to get the kares over with. So therefore, Yantiv Sheni, go ahead and do it. And others say no, it's a takana d'Rabbanan, and you have to wait. So the Shulchan Aruch does not go like the Rambam. The Shulchan Aruch goes that we did not do a milah Shalom Bizmana on Yantiv Sheni as well. So we don't follow the Rambam's opinion. We did not do a Milah. However, the question is, what about a suffix Milah Shalom Bizmana? So again, a Milah Bizmana, a Milah which is... What?
Just go the whole way. Milah Shabizmana.
No, a Milah Bizmana when?
Milah Bizmana on the second day of Yontif.
No, so that's not a Shaila. A Milah, you do it on Shabbos. I'm saying...
I'm sorry.
A Milah, right, so Milah Bizmana... So that doesn't make it. You always do a Milah Bizmana on Shabbos, normal Leida, etc. That's not on Shabbos and Yontif. A Milah Shalom Bizmana, so we never do it on Shabbos. We never do it on Yontif Rishon. Machlokas Rambam and the Rush on Yontif Sheni. We paskin no. Our minhag is we don't do a Milah Shalom Bizmana on Yontif Sheni. We'd wait to after Yontif is over. Actually, the case in the Mishnah, which brings it down, actually only talks about Rosh Hashanah, because obviously Rabbi was in Eretz Yisrael and he was living, so he didn't have the concept of Yantiv Sheni. The only case was Rosh Hashanah. So in Rosh Hashanah, that's what the Mishnah actually talks about, that you don't do the Milah on the second day of Rosh Hashanah. So but doesn't say explicitly, but what about the other days? So maybe other Yantiv, that's where you can have a machokes, because the Mishnah always says it. No Milah Shalom Bizmana on the second day of Rosh Hashanah. But maybe Yantiv Sheni Shel Pesach, Sukkot is a different issue, because that was never discussed, because when Rabbi wrote the Mishnayos, there wasn't no Geya then. So that's the given. The question is, what about a suffix Milah Shalom Bizmana? So let's say a C-section baby that comes out day 8, comes out on, Day 8 comes out on Yantiv Sheni, or any other Ben Hashmashas, or any other case where it's a suffix Milah Shalom Bizmana. So does that make a difference? So the post can bring down it's a Svek Sveka. It's a double doubt then. So therefore they say, what? And what's the double doubt? One doubt is maybe it's a Milah Bizmana, maybe it is the time, but I don't know, it's a doubt. And even if it's not, we have the Rambam's opinion that a Vadai Milah Shalom Bizmana could be done on Yantiv Sheni. And therefore, many poskim ameko on a suffix Milah Shelo Bizmana, they will do on Yantav Sheni. So a definite Milah Shelo Bizmana, the minig is not to do on Yantav Sheni. It's a machlokas, but we don't do it. But a suffix Milah Shelo Bizmana, it's a svek sveka, and therefore many poskim ameko that you do the Milah on the last day. In fact, what about if
So
the
Danish Mash's case would be an example.
yeah, that's right. In fact,
Without a C-section.
right, it's the
So
regular.
a C-section then that is Danish Mash's would be a triple.
Right,
You for sure would not use
Yeah,
two.
exactly.